Improving Self-Esteem Module 4, Biased Expectations. I do not own this material. I'm reading this workbook aloud for those that might benefit from an accompanying audio resource while going through the materials. This information package is designed to provide you with some information about low self-esteem, how it develops, how it is maintained, and how to address the problem. It's organized into modules that are designed to be worked through in sequence. The Government of Western Australia's Centre for Clinical Interventions recommends that you complete one module before going on to the next. Each module includes information, worksheets, and suggested exercises or activities. Table of Contents. Introduction, page 2. What are biased expectations? Page 2. Challenging biased expectations. Page 4. Thought Diary for Biased Expectations, example, page 6. Worksheet, Thought Diary for Biased Expectations, page 7. Experimenting with Biased Expectations, page 8. Worksheet, Experiment Record for Biased Expectations, page 11. Module Summary, page 12. About this module, page 13. Introduction. In Module 3, we talked about how dormant low self-esteem becomes active and maintains itself until it becomes acute. When you encounter an at-risk situation, your negative core belief about yourself is activated and leads to two types of negative thoughts: biased expectations and negative self-evaluations. In this module, we will examine biased expectations in more detail and discuss ways of changing and overcoming them. By addressing your biased expectations in daily situations, you can prevent the negative beliefs you hold about yourself from being confirmed and reactivated. Ultimately, this will help you to chip away at your low self-esteem. What are biased expectations? Biased expectations are negative thoughts that commonly occur when you encounter an at-risk situation where it looks likely that your unhelpful rule or assumption will be broken and your negative core beliefs have been activated. When this happens, you will tend to make predictions about how things will turn out, and these predictions often tend to be negative. You will tend to overestimate the likelihood that bad things will happen, exaggerate how bad things will be, underestimate your ability to deal with things if they don't go well, and ignore other factors in the situation, which suggests that things will not be as bad as you're predicting. When you jump to such negative conclusions about the future, you will tend to behave in particular ways, often engaging in unhelpful behaviors. You will tend to avoid the situation totally, try the situation out but escape when things become too difficult or the anxiety seems overwhelming, be overly cautious and engage in safety behaviors. These are behaviors that you use to help you get through the situation. For example, you might take someone with you, over-prepare so that you can do better at the face of the situation, take medication to help you through, or place certain conditions on entering the situation. For example, turn up late or leave early. At the end of the day, the unhelpful thoughts and behaviors contribute to your feeling incredibly anxious, nervous, uncertain, and unconfident about things, and this is confirmation that your negative core beliefs are true. Here's an example of biased expectations in action. You can follow this example that's illustrated in the form on the model on the next page. Let's say that you have the negative core belief, I'm stupid. At present, your low self-esteem is dormant as you've developed the rule and assumption, I must never let others see my true abilities, because if they do, they will know that I'm stupid and not want to have anything to do with me. As long as you're able to live up to your rule, you might feel okay about yourself. However, the situation is about to change. A few of your friends invite you to join their team for a quiz night. You're now in an at-risk situation because you'll have to show others your abilities at the quiz night. This means that your rule is likely to be broken. At this point, you might have thought, I'll be no good, I'll let everyone down, or everyone will know how dumb I am, and are probably feeling anxious. It's also at this point that you could choose how to approach this situation. You could avoid the situation totally by declining your friend's invitation, or you could decide that you'll accept the invitation. If you accept the invitation, you might then think about how you could make sure that people do not come to the conclusion that you're stupid. As such, you might prepare very hard for quiz night by reading all of the week's newspapers, watching current affairs programs and documentaries on TV, and reading trivia books. You also might think about how you could leave the quiz night halfway through if things are not turning out well. As discussed above, all these are unhelpful behaviors, and they maintain your negative emotions and confirm your negative core belief. The following is an image description of the full model of low self-esteem with an example given within the chart. Two flowcharts, flowchart 1 titled Dormant Low Self-Esteem and flowchart 2 titled Acute Low Self-Esteem, are to be read together. In flowchart 1, statement 1 is on the left and reads negative life experiences. On its right is right-directed dotted arrow. Last module we stated that this indicates that negative life experiences can, but do not always, lead to statement 2, negative core beliefs about yourself, which is on the right of the arrow. Below it is another statement, I am stupid. On the right of statement 2 are two arrows, one that faces the right and the other that faces the left. Statement 3 on the right is unhelpful rules and assumptions. Below it is written, I must never let others see my true abilities, because if they do, they will know that I am stupid and not want to have anything to do with me. An arrow directs downwards from it to statement 4, unhelpful behavior. Below this is written, make sure that I check my work many times before showing it to anyone, make excuses to avoid presentations, or if I have to, write out a script and say what's on the script. An arrow from that directs back to statement 2, negative core belief. Flowchart 2 starts with statement 1, at-risk situation. Underneath is written, friends invite me to join their team for a quiz night. A downwardly directed arrow below it indicates statement 2, activation of negative core belief, with the statement, I am stupid. A downward directed arrow below this indicates statement 3, biased expectations. Examples given include, I will be no good. I will make them lose. I will make a complete fool of myself. Everyone will see how dumb I am. And the others will wish I was not on their team. A downwardly directed arrow below biased expectations indicates statement 4, unhelpful behavior or behaviors. Examples given include avoid, say no to invitation, over-prepare, safety, watch all the news items during the week, read the week's newspapers, read trivia books. Conditions, safety, only answer questions if I am 100% sure so I don't get anything wrong. Escape plan, say, I'm not feeling well and leave if things are not going well. A downwardly directed arrow below this indicates statement 5, unhelpful emotions, with the examples anxiety and nervousness. And statement 6, confirmation of negative core belief. The example below it is, I'm right, I am stupid. That ends the image description. Continuing with the above example, your belief, I am stupid, gets confirmed in a number of ways. Firstly, it's confirmed by all of the negative predictions you're making, all that negative self-talk. Secondly, because you feel so anxious, you might use this as a sign that you are all the negative things that you believe about yourself. If I feel so anxious about this, I must be stupid. Thirdly, all your unhelpful behaviors mean that you're acting in a manner consistent with the idea that you are stupid. So if you act as if you are stupid, you'll continue to think and believe that you are stupid. Finally, if things don't go the way you would like them to, for example, you get some of the questions wrong, you leave early. Because you do so, you don't give yourself a chance to answer a question correctly or realize that getting a question wrong isn't such a bad thing, or just have fun regardless of the outcome. Alternatively, if things go okay and you answer a few questions correctly, you might ignore your efforts as no big deal. If things go really well and you answer heaps of questions, you might attribute it all to your preparation or say the questions are really easy, but not acknowledge your own abilities. What we have seen is an unhelpful way of responding to a daily situation, which helps keep your low self-esteem alive and well. So how could you respond differently, in a way inconsistent with low self-esteem? How could you have a realistic expectation and engage in helpful behavior? Challenging biased expectations. One way to address biased expectations is to challenge them head-on. In cognitive behavioral therapy, this is also called disputation. Remember that our thoughts and expectations are often opinions that we've picked up or learned rather than facts. Therefore, they can be questioned and should not be something that we blindly accept if they are causing us distress. To challenge or dispute your biased expectations means that you dissect them, evaluate how accurate or likely they are, examine what evidence you base your expectations on, and look at any positive things that you might be ignoring. In this way, you're like a detective or a lawyer trying to get to the facts of how realistic your expectations are and putting things in perspective. Challenging your biased expectations isn't something you should do in your head, as this can get messy and confusing. The best way is to write it down. To help you through the process, we suggest using a thought diary for biased expectations. This helps you work through the challenging process step by step on paper, making things clearer and more helpful for you. On the next page is an example of how to complete a thought diary for biased expectations, and following that is a blank thought diary for you to practice on. The thought diaries guide you through how to get your biased expectations out on paper. The thought diary will first ask you to identify your biased expectations. To help you do that, first ask yourself, what is the situation I am in? Then, what am I expecting? What am I predicting? What do I see happening in this situation? What conclusions am I making? After you've written these down, you'll then need to ask yourself, how strongly do I believe this will happen? Rate the strength of your belief between 0 and 100. What emotions am I feeling? How intense are these emotions? Rate the intensity of your emotions between 0 and 100%. Once you have completed the first section, you're ready to begin to challenge your biased expectations. Here are the questions asked in your thought diary to challenge these types of negative thoughts. What is the evidence for my expectations? What is the evidence against my expectations? How likely is it that what I'm expecting will actually happen? Rate between 0 and 100%. What is the worst that could happen? What is the best that could happen? What is the most likely thing that will happen? How does it affect me when I expect the worst? If the worst did happen, what could I do to cope? How else could I view the situation? Are there any positives in me or the situation that I am ignoring? The ultimate aim of doing this thought diary is for you to develop more realistic expectations. Once you've explored the answers to the above challenging questions in the thought diary, ask yourself, what would be a more realistic expectation? The final step is then to re-rate how much you now believe the original biased expectation you were making, and re-rate the intensity of the emotions you were originally feeling. If you work through the entire thought diary for challenging your biased expectations, it is likely that you will experience a decrease in your belief in the negative predictions that you are making and a decrease in the intensity of your emotions. Using a thought diary to develop realistic expectations will help quieten rather than activate or confirm your negative beliefs about yourself. This will help you approach situations with an open mind, try new things, and often be pleasantly surprised by what you find, instead of letting your negative opinion of yourself constantly interfere with how you live your life. Try using a thought diary for biased expectations the next time you notice when you start feeling anxious, nervous, and uncertain, or doubt yourself and your abilities. Stop yourself when you notice these sorts of feelings and see if you can find any biased expectations that are contributing to the feeling. See if you notice any predictions you are making, negative conclusions you are jumping to, or bad outcomes you are envisaging. If you notice these biased expectations rearing their ugly head, use a thought diary to tackle them. Continue to use a thought diary to deal with these sorts of thoughts and feelings until it becomes second nature. Then, you'll find that you can easily catch the biased expectations in your head and challenge them in your head. This will take some time and a lot of practice, so for now, stick to writing it all down in your thought diary. Thought diary for biased expectations, an example. On the next few slides, I'll be reading aloud the example that they give for one of the thought diaries for biased expectations. Identifying your biased expectations. What is the at-risk situation? Friends invite me to be on their quiz team. What am I expecting? What am I predicting? What do I see happening in this situation? What conclusions am I jumping to? I'll be no good. I'll make them lose. I'll make a complete fool of myself. Everyone will see how dumb I am. The others will wish I wasn't on their team. How much do I believe it will happen? 0 to 100%. 80%. What emotions am I feeling? Rate the intensity 0 to 100%. Anxious, 70%. Challenge your biased expectations. What is the evidence for my expectations? There are times I don't know the answers to other people's questions. There are times that I'm not up to speed on current affairs. What is the evidence against my expectations? I have been able to answer some questions at quiz night before. I have had experiences where I've known things that other people haven't. How likely is it that what I'm expecting to happen will actually happen? 0 to 100%. 30%. What is the worst that could happen? I won't answer a single question correctly, we will lose, and my teammates won't talk to me for the rest of the night. What is the best that could happen? I will know the answers to most questions, and because of me, our team will win. What is the most likely thing that will happen? I'll be able to answer some questions, and our team will do okay. How does it affect me when I expect the worst? Expecting it will be a disaster just makes me feel anxious, and likely not go do something that is supposed to be fun. If the worst did happen, what could I do to cope? If I couldn't answer anything, I could make a joke of it to the others. They probably wouldn't notice or care that much. They are my friends after all. I'd feel a bit bad, but probably wouldn't remember it in a couple of weeks' time. How else could I view the situation? It's just a quiz night. It's supposed to be for fun. They probably invited people for their company and to have fun rather than their intellectual abilities. They probably don't take it that seriously. Quiz nights are supposed to be tricky. They may ask questions that are in areas I know little about. That doesn't mean that I'm dumb or don't know anything. Are there any positives in me or the situation that I'm ignoring? It's a team effort. If we lose, it isn't just one person's fault. I am good at music and science questions, so it's likely I might know some of the answers to those types of questions. Note from the reader. On the next page, you're given a blank version of the worksheet to fill out, or if you go to the website, you can download the worksheet as a standalone PDF without the rest of the material. I suggest to my clients that they have this with them so that they can use it on the fly if they find an at-risk situation that comes up where they'd like the opportunity to challenge it. You can keep it bookmarked in the browser app on your phone, or you can open it and take a screenshot that you can easily find in your photo gallery. If you'd like the question read aloud, you can rewind to the previous section from pages 4 and 5. Experimenting with biased expectations. By challenging your biased expectations, as you did in the last section using a thought diary, you can now be in a better position to approach situations with an open mind and with more realistic and balanced expectations. The next step of challenging biased expectations is to test them out to see how accurate they really are. This is like a scientist doing an experiment with your biased expectations to test how true they are. As with the thought diary, there are some steps you have to work through to properly experiment with your biased expectations. Below is an example of how to do this, and on page 11, there is a worksheet to help you complete the process yourself. Step 1. Identifying your biased expectations. From the first section of your thought diary, you will already know what the at-risk situation is, and what it is that you've predicted in the situation, and how much you believe it will happen. Also, write down specifically how you will know if your biased expectations have come true. Ask yourself, what exactly would happen? What would an outsider see happening? What would you be doing? What would others be doing? Step 1, an example. The situation. Friends invite me to be on their quiz team. My biased expectations. I'll be no good. I'll make them lose. I'll make a complete fool of myself. Everyone will see how dumb I am. The others will wish I wasn't on their team. How much do I believe it'll happen? 0 to 100%. 80%. How will I know if it has happened? I won't know a single question. Everyone except me will know the answers. The others will make rude comments or glare at me. Step 2. Identify your unhelpful behaviors. Next, you need to identify what unhelpful behaviors you might be engaging in to cope with your negative predictions and anxiety. For example, avoidance, escape, safety behaviors. Step 2, an example. Over-preparing for the quiz. For example, news, newspapers, trivia books, placing conditions on going, for example, planning to only answer if I'm 100% sure, having an escape plan. Step 3, remember your realistic expectations. Next, remind yourself of the new perspective that you developed from your thought diary, as you will also want to test your new realistic expectation against your old biased expectations. An example, I don't have to be really good, it's just a quiz night. They are my friends. They're just there to have fun, and I don't really care about winning or who answers what. It's likely that I will be able to answer some questions that are in my area of interest. How I do at a quiz night isn't a reflection of who I am as a person. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. Step 4, identifying your helpful behaviors. This involves noting what it is you will do differently to test out your new and old expectations to see which is more accurate. This is really setting up the experiment and specifying what it is you will actually do. This will generally involve confronting rather than avoiding the situation, staying in the situation rather than escaping, and stopping safety behaviors to see how you go by yourself and without imposing conditions and restrictions on you entering the situation. For example, ask my friends if they are doing anything to prepare for the quiz night. If they do anything for preparation, do only as much as they are doing. If they're not preparing at all, go to the quiz night without preparing beforehand. Stay at the quiz night until the end, regardless of how I am doing with answering the questions. Answer questions even if I'm not totally certain. Purposefully suggest an answer that I know is wrong. Step 5. Carry out the experiment. Follow through with what you set out to do in step 4. Carry out the experiment, engaging in the more helpful behaviors you have identified, and see what happens. Step 6. Evaluate the results. The last step is to reflect on what actually happened and how this compares to what you were expecting in step 1. What were the results of the experiment? What did you observe? How does this compare to your biased expectations? What expectations did the results support, biased or realistic? What was it like to carry the experiment out and act differently? What did you learn from the experience? Step 6, an example. What actually happened? I answered some questions that were in my areas of interest. I got some questions wrong, but so did others. No one saw it was a big deal. I had a good time. No one seemed to take it too seriously. They seemed to be pleased to have me on their team. How much did my biased expectations come true? 0 to 100%. 10%. Which expectations were supported by the experiment? My more realistic expectations. What was it like to act differently? It was hard at first, but not over-preparing, purposely suggesting a wrong answer, and not planning how to escape showed me that I can do this and that not knowing everything is not so bad. What did I learn? This shows me that what I predict will happen in situations may be guided by my opinion of myself and may not always be true. So I may need to make expectations more realistic, act accordingly, and see what happens. If the results of your experiment do not support your biased expectations, which is often the case, that is great. It will be important to remember that the next time you find yourself making biased expectations. It will also be important to reflect and ask yourself, what does this mean for you as a person? However, should your biased expectations be supported, which may happen at times, it will be important to ask yourself some questions about this. Ask yourself, were there any other reasons for the result aside from who you are as a person? What else was happening at that time? Are there other ways of viewing what happened? What could you learn from the experience to improve or change things in the future? It is important to note that not everything we think is inaccurate or has no grain of truth to it. However, often when we have problems with low self-esteem, we predict negative things about ourselves and our abilities all the time and act accordingly. We never step back to question these predictions or test them out. This is a habit that is important to break. This is the automatic process of predicting the worst because of our negative view of ourselves that we want to change. It is important to tackle this because if you can make more realistic predictions in your day-to-day life, you will think and act differently, in a manner inconsistent with someone with low self-esteem. Behaving in a manner that is inconsistent with your low opinion of yourself is the path to overcoming this negative opinion. When you do this, you will start to gather new information about yourself, which will allow you to see yourself in a less harsh, more positive, and kinder light. Now, it's time for you to do an experiment. Use the worksheets on the next page to help you plan an experiment to test out your biased expectations. Experiment record for biased expectations. Step 1. Identify your biased expectations. The situation, my biased expectations. How much do I believe it'll happen? 0 to 100%. How will I know it has happened? Step 2. Identify your unhelpful behaviors. Step 3. Remember your realistic expectations. Step 4. Identify your helpful behaviors and set up your experiment. Step 5. Carry out the experiment from Step 4. Step 6. Evaluate the results. What actually happened? How much did my biased expectations come true, 0 to 100%? Which expectations were supported by the experiment? What was it like to behave differently? What did I learn from this experiment? Module summary. Biased expectations occur when it looks likely that your unhelpful rule or assumption will be broken. Biased expectations involve overestimating the likelihood that something bad will happen and how bad the consequences will be, as well as underestimating your ability to cope. Biased expectations will lead to certain types of unhelpful behaviors and unhelpful emotions. Unhelpful behaviors include avoidance, escape, and safety behaviors. Unhelpful emotions include anxiety, nervousness, fear, doubt, uncertainty. One way to overcome biased expectations is to challenge or dispute them using a thought diary. This involves identifying what you are expecting, challenging your expectations, and developing more realistic expectations. Another way to overcome biased expectations is to experiment with them. This involves planning experiments to test the accuracy of your expectations and is based on identifying your unhelpful behaviors and engaging in more helpful behavior. It will often involve behaving in a manner inconsistent with what you're expecting. For example, approaching challenges and stopping avoidance, escape, and safety behaviors. About this module, contributors, background, and references can be found within the information package at the link above or below this video. This information package is the intellectual property of the Government of Western Australia's Centre for Clinical Interventions. Many other self-help resources can also be found on their website. For many people, low self-esteem can lead to difficult emotions. If this is the case for you, you may find there are other resources for managing depression or managing anxiety helpful.